The first question, of course, is what is energy psychology and how is that different than energy medicine?
Well, energy psychology is, in my book, the most exciting innovation to come along in my almost 40 years as a clinical psychologist. And it
Wow.
is the application of the principles of energy medicine to psychological issues, to
Ah,
issues like overcoming different kinds of mental problems, but also for athletes to get peak performance, for kids who are involved in some kind of artistic endeavor to allow their creativity to flow more. So it's got the treatment side of it, and it's also got the human potential side, developing who you are. And it's very exciting to me to see how energy medicine gets applied in these ways, because I have been with Donna for 33 years, and it wasn't until she was writing energy medicine that it began to occur to me that there was relevance for psychological issues as well.
so can
Mm-hmm.
it help with things like phobias and fears and anxieties? And if so, how?
Yes, so whether you're working with the kind of garden variety emotional problems that people have, like irrational jealousy or unfounded fears, it can shift those kinds of problems that we have every day. You know, if you're about to go in front of a video camera and if you're feeling a little nervous, you can work some of the acupuncture points on your skin to relax that anxiety, to decrease that anxiety, but it also works with much more severe conditions. So PTSD is a good example. Post-traumatic stress disorder is more than 300,000 of our returning veterans are suffering with that right now, and there is no really good, effective cures. The cures that are there are laborious. A study just came out showing that only 1 out of 10 veterans that goes to the VA actually does the whole course of treatment. So
Wow.
so faster alternatives are really needed right now. And what energy psychology does with PTSD is that PTSD is the amygdala is part of the brain that recognizes threat. So when a person has a severe traumatic experience, such as in warfare, the part of the amygdala that recognizes threat goes into high arousal. And what happens with PTSD is that it stays in high arousal, or it quickly goes into higher arousal with a memory or with triggers. So there's a loud noise and everything, the person's back on the battlefield, or a siren and the person's back on the battlefield. What you do with the energy psychology is at the same time that the amygdala goes into high arousal, because you're asking the person to remember an incident from the war, a difficult incident, or to remember a trigger that gets them, you are tapping on acupuncture points that send signals to the brain that lower arousal.
Mm.
So at once the brain is going into high arousal and the signals are saying to lower the arousal, so it's getting conflicting messages. And if nothing bad happens in the environment, the message to lower arousal dominates. So it brings the arousal down. So now that becomes the new baseline. So the person can remember the event without re-experiencing it, reliving it. They can hear a loud sound without going into that stress response. And that's the core of treating PTSD. There's more to it, but that's the part a person can't talk themselves out of those reactions. Those reactions are beyond pre-verbal. They're based in the autonomic nervous system. So by having a technique where you can shift what's going on in the autonomic nervous system, you are very quickly changing something that talk therapy could take forever and still not be able to access that. So you can do it with something like PTSD, but also the more everyday problems we have. We want to be more effective in our tennis game, and you can
Mm.
visualize that perfect serve and be tapping on that visualization, and it seems to give that message to the brain in ways that just talking or thinking about it don't.
What should people expect when they begin to do the exercises in the promise of energy psychology? is it like when you take a pill and you feel better in 15 minutes, or is it more subtle than that? What should people expect?
Well, people are surprised because everybody starts this as a skeptic because it looks so silly, frankly. It's you're tapping on points on the skin, you're humming and counting and doing things that get the right and left hemispheres of the brain to integrate better. And so it's not what you usually think of as psychotherapy, and people don't expect it to work. I do a lot of demonstrations at conferences where I bring somebody on stage, and they're shocked. They'll be thinking about their fear of closed spaces, and they think about it, and I have them give a 0 to 10 rating. They'll close their eyes. They'll say, "Oh, it's a 10." And then we do a few rounds of tapping. It goes down to a 4 and then down to a 0. And recently, in one of our conferences, the woman who was terrified of elevators, of anything with a closed space, but she had 2 little boys, and they were always bringing her into different places where she couldn't, they were very, very uncomfortable for her. She, after about a 15 or 20-minute demonstration, got this. The way it was set up was that the stage had a curtain over it, so you're standing on a platform, and beneath the platform is open space about 2.5 feet high. She climbed into that and just stayed there until somebody brought her out. So it was so surprising to her how rapid it was. Now it's not so rapid with everything, but with phobias that are basic simple phobias, that is not generalized anxiety disorder, but a fear of elevators, a fear of closed spaces, a fear of heights, a fear, it's particularly rapid with simple phobias. So they're always good for stage demonstrations, but also 10% of the population has a phobia. So if you are
a lot of people.
One of those people, this is a method that can help you, even though you may have tried a lot of other ways to talk yourself out of it or grit your teeth and go through it and hope that the phobia would go away. It doesn't. It just, what that does, it just, the amygdala, the threat detection part of the brain, just says, you're not paying attention to my signals that you're going to die. So it's like at that level. And people with phobias are very brave. They go through their lives pushing through the phobia, but you can root it out at the brain level and very quickly. So phobias are a really good example of this method where you don't need other treatments.
It's probably great for us to stress too that before anybody does anything major with energy psychology or energy medicine, that they should work with a practitioner of some sort, a licensed practitioner, or in some way, not to begin to just stop taking all medications or anything like that.
Yes, certainly. For any diagnosed psychiatric disorder, you do want to have the proper care from a mental health professional. What is interesting, though, is the way this is caught on like wildfire, so that 1.2 million people have downloaded Gary Craig, one of our co-authors, his handbook on how to do this. A lot of people are buying this book because it's more comprehensive and brings in the energy medicine as well. And just last month, there was what was called the World Tapping Summit, which was an online week-long event, and 140,000 people signed into that. So it's
Wow.
really being used beyond the therapist office by people just wanting to manage their emotions more effectively.
Yeah, it feels good to just know that we can do something, that we're not reliant on working with someone else or pharmaceuticals, that we actually have some power in our own lives to
Absolutely.
help ourselves.